Well, welcome everybody to the Information Quality Cluster session, Enhancing the Guidelines for Sharing and Reusing Dataset Information Quality. I'm Bob Downs, and with me are Gapeng Hampapuram Ramapriyan, known as Rama, Yakshing Wei, and David Maroney. And oh, did I skip to me? Oh yeah, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. Welcome, and the notes document, and I just posted the link to that. That should be accessible as well through Kiko Chat. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and sign in. And the resources and presentations are also linked from the notes document. And if you're not talking, please mute yourself and then turn off your camera when you're not speaking so that we can keep the bandwidth flowing, hopefully. Also, we have the revised community participation guidelines available from the ISIP website. And please, I suspect most of you reviewed them when we were registering, but you can take a look at them and refresh your memory by looking at them. And for our session goals today, we're going to discuss the international and interdisciplinary data quality perspectives, and become familiar with the dataset information quality guidelines, and then look at some ways in which we can begin to enhance a couple of those elements from the guidelines, elements 3 and 4. So for our agenda today, our first speaker is going to be Yakshing Wei, and he's going to give us an overview of the information quality cluster and the dataset quality guidelines. And then Natalia Atkins is going to speak about the data quality in Australia's integrated marine observing and strengthening the foundations that underpin IMOS. And then Rama is going to talk about interdisciplinary perspectives on dataset quality and give us a summary from the SciDataCon session that happened in the fall. And then Peng is also going to talk about those perspectives, but giving us a summary from the RDA 18th plenary meeting. And then we're going to prepare for the breakouts, where we do a brief review of the guidelines 3 and 4. And then we're going to break out into two different groups, one looking at elements 3 and the other one looking at element 4 for about 20 minutes. And then we're going to come back to the main session where we can do summaries and takeaways. And so with that, Yakshing, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Bob. Give me one moment to share my screen very quickly. Okay. I hope you can all see my screen.
I see it.
Okay, great, thanks, Bob. Hi, everyone. I'm Yakshing Wei from Oak Ridge National Lab, Distributed Active Archive Center, or NADAC, one of NASA's Earth Science Data Centers. I'm chairing the ISIP Information Quality Cluster together with Bob Downs, Gapeng, David Maroney, and Rama. So today I'm very happy to give you a very brief introduction to the ISIP Information Quality Cluster, some of its key recent efforts and outcomes, and also touch a little bit about the motivation for the development of the dataset quality guidelines, which is the key topic for today's session. So ISIP IQC, its vision is to become internationally recognized as authoritative and a responsive information source for guiding the implementation of data quality standards and best practices of the science data systems, data sets, and data and metadata dissemination services. So what we do, we really encourage sharing experience and best practices, and we collaborate nationally and internationally, and we invite speakers to our monthly telecoms, and we actively participate sessions or presentations at meetings and conferences like AGU, AMS, EC, of course. And here is the link to our IQC Wiki homepage. And we try to make updates as frequent as possible. And it does contain a lot of useful resources and links to the publications and the presentations that we had in our monthly telecoms. So feel free to check it out. So I really want to highlight a few selected publications initiated and led by the IQC. So back in 2017, the IQC led by Rama published the paper Ensuring and Improving Information Quality for the Earth Science Data and the Products in the DLIP magazine. And I will talk a little bit more about this particular publication in the next slide. And then David Moroney, also co-chair of IQC, has been leading a community effort focusing on identifying a synopsis of the variety of approaches to capturing the duration and the dissemination and the utilization of Earth science observational uncertainty information. And this effort is looking at this from a variety of perspectives, including mathematical, programmatic, user, and observational. And feel free to check it out. And then more recently, IQC co-chair Gapeng led an effort toward developing international community guidelines for fair data quality information. The call to action statement essay was published in CoData Data Science Journal in May last year. And this call to action kicked off the development for international community guidelines for fair DQI. And that resulted in a really significant achievement, which Peng will talk more about momentarily. So I said I would come back to the Rama 2017 paper. This paper, Multi-Dimensions of Data and Information Quality, this is a very important publication as it laid the foundation for many IQC follow-on activities. And through this paper, IQC defined the 4 dimensions of data and information quality and their corresponding stages through the data product lifecycle. And those 4 dimensions include science quality, the product quality, steward quality, and also service quality. So due to the limited time, I won't go into details, but feel free to check into this publication to find out more. And then lastly, I want to touch a little bit on the motivation for the development of the international guidelines for DQI. So it's a clear understanding that a need for such dataset quality guidelines in the community. But such guidelines do not exist yet. And it's clear that the need has not been addressed within or across disciplines. So leading the development aligns very well with the vision of IQC and development of the guidelines builds on IQC's previous achievements. It was really encouraged by the community's active response to the call to action, and the publication I just mentioned on the previous slide. So that's a brief list of motivations for this effort. And lastly, I want to say thanks again. There are a lot of things going on in IQC, and I couldn't cover all of them here. But feel free to contact us if you have any questions or want to get involved in any of the IQC discussions and activities. And of course, feel free to sign up the IQC mailing list following the wiki site link here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Yak-Sing. It was great. Our next speaker is Dr. Natalia Atkins, and she's going to be speaking about, I should say Dr. Natalia Atkins is from the University of Tasmania, and she's going to be speaking about the Imos system. Please go ahead, Natalia.
Thanks, Bob. Hopefully that's coming through.
Yes, I see it.
All right. I'll basically start off this presentation by just prefacing straight up that my position at Imos is as metadata officer. I'm not a data scientist. So in terms of that side of the science of what I'm presenting, I'm not going to be able to answer questions, but I'm just wanting to present what we have. So presenting this on behalf of myself and Paul Van Roof, who's the Senior Science Officer. Oops. All right, just a bit of a brief outline of what I'm going to present. Just for those who aren't familiar with Imos, I'll give an introduction to Imos, what it is and how does it work. And then really the sort of the basis of what this talk is about, the foundations that underpin Imos. And then I'll touch on things such as the publication of procedures, protocols and reports, submission of these items to ocean best practices, what we do with vocabularies, and also our submission for Cordrust Seal Data Repository Certification. So what is Imos? Imos is a national collaborative research infrastructure. It's funded by the Australian government. It's national. It's a collaborative partnership. So there's a bunch of icons there representing universities, government organisations that are principal participants and associate participants. And we're basically about research infrastructure, enabling systematic and sustained observing of the marine environment. And it's about open data access for scientific research and other purposes. And Imos has been running since 2006. So it was our 15th year last year. How does it work? It basically is run by what is known as a series of facilities. We have different equipment on being collected from different regions around Australia by different sensors, and it's integrated across scales, both coastal, shelf and open ocean, and covering disciplines such as physics, biogeochemical and ecosystem. And I work for the Australian Ocean Data Network, which is basically what brings all the data together and makes it discoverable. So the national footprint of what we're covering with around Australia, you can see that the breadth of data that we collect and the geographic range is basically circumnavigating Australia and like I said, from the different scales from coastal out into the open ocean. So Imos's observations are critically important for the sustainable management of Australia's marine resources. And basically, as touched on before, it's about open data. All the data that is collected is discoverable, it's openly accessible, usable and reusable. Global context for Imos, for those that are wondering how we fit into the global system. Imos is an integral part of of GOOS, the Global Ocean Observing System. It's formally recognised by UNESCO as one of the 13 GOOS regional alliances, and it's regarded as a leader in best practice marine science observation and data management. The data that we collect also feeds into and forms basis of many global observation programs, and many of those are identified here. So the foundations of Imos, it's all about sustained observations, and the pillars that form the basis of that and ensure that this occurs. And basically these pillars make sure that it's impossible to knock Imos over. So we have sort of 4 things that we concentrate on. I'm going to concentrate on the 2 on the left here in terms of best practice protocols and data management processes are the ones I'm going to focus on here, but also importantly, peer-reviewed science and implementation planning, and then it's sort of the short-term strategy, and then we've got long-term strategic planning as well. So into sort of the crux of what we're interested here, Imos's procedures, protocols and reports are in the process of being uploaded to Imos. So we're collating them at the Australian Ocean Data Network. In terms of our sort of what we identify as facilities and sub-facilities, our Southern Ocean time series, we've collected an array of various QC reports, we've got about 11, and deployment records of these moorings over the last 20 years. Ocean gliders, delayed mode QA QC best practice manual, we're up to version 3 of this. Similarly with our national reference stations, we've got a biogeochemical operations manual. We've also progressed through many versions on that one as well. And similarly with a different facility, ocean radars, our QC manual is up to version 2.1. Alongside this, the reports need to be discoverable. So we have now created a metadata record for each of these reports, which make it discoverable alongside our data metadata records. So that these documents are discoverable in our metadata catalogues. We assign a DOI to them. They're hosted by the AODN, so they're discoverable in Imos. If they are related to data collections that we display through our AODN portal, they're discoverable there. Links are provided to the manuals there. And also they're discoverable through our Imos web pages. Wanted to touch on the community guidelines that are going to be being discussed here. I've sort of paraphrased the 5 guidelines there, and having a look at the work that we're doing currently and where we're sort of hitting the mark in regards to these guidelines. We're definitely describing data sets with comprehensive landing page, version, etc. with Guideline 1. Definitely hitting Guideline 4 with developing these reports, definitely human readable, and bring all this information together and making it discoverable. And the fact that we're reporting and disseminating this information via a web interface with a comprehensive description. So we're basically covering off 3 of these guidelines quite comprehensively. The other 2 are elements that we would need to look into, and that would be the work that Paul would be looking into with the different Imos facilities. Wanted to sort of introduce ocean best practices. I did hear it talked about in several talks earlier in the session this morning. Sorry, it's the morning here for me. For those that aren't familiar with Ocean's best practice system, it's an open access, permanent digital repository of community best practices in ocean-related sciences. It's maintained by UNESCO's International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange, the IODE. Many, as I touched on, I gave some examples before, many of the Imos procedures and protocols are registered with Ocean best practice. We do have work to do, and we're working with other Imos facilities to start bringing in and documenting their best practices. And as said before, it covers things such as sampling and analysis protocols and calibrations, and things such as data processing, management, and QA/QC procedures. All documents must be registered with OBPS through Imos. So by doing this, by managing this process, we ensure that the DOIs are listed through the Imos AODN storage repositories, and it helps to maximise the impact derived from Imos funding. This ensures that all operations are conducted according to international standards following Ocean's best practices. And it's basically helping to create additional impact through our protocols and practices. For those, as said, the slides are shared. Here's a link to all the Imos documents. I just want to sort of show what we have up there. We've got 31 what they call community practices, and we also provide access to 7 protocol videos. So just sort of giving you an example of what you see with the 7 protocol videos. Here's a range of a few of them with the titles and what's presented. And basically you select one of these, which opens up another window, and you're provided with a set of information, metadata about what that video is about, and also a link to the video, which is most important. In regards to the 31 community practices, which is where I sit and which I help with submissions to ocean best practices, just some examples of what we have here. We have something from the Southern Ocean Time Series, the temperature record, QC report, the ocean gliders, best practice manual. We also have the ability with Ocean Best Practices to submit different versions. And when you submit a new version, the previous version is superseded but still available. So providing that, that sort of flow of information and that workflow, which is important. And also we have things such as deployment records. So what's provided here is deployment of the East Australian Current Deepwater Moorings Array. So the version 1.1 covers from 2018 to 2019, then a new document, version 1.2 covers the next deployment from 2016 to 2018. So we've got a range of information being displayed through OBP. I wanted to take a closer look at one of those reports. So looking at the temperature records, QC report from SOTS, and there's the handle for that. Landing page for this information, like I said, with videos, a range of metadata provided there. You can access the document itself directly from here. And then sort of just zooming in on a couple of elements there. The DOI from Imos is maintained, so people are able to access that, and that forms part of the citation. But OBP also provide a handle to this submission in OBP, so people can be directed to this submission at OBP. There's also more information, that's what's on the cup sheet. So this is sort of a brief overview. And then if you sort of select the full item, you get a lot more information there that you're able to peruse and provide information about. So basically linking back to the EOV's spatial coverage of what this report covers, licensing, all this sort of information that you need for use of the report. Other elements within Imos that relate to data quality in terms of data management. We've developed today a MATLAB toolbox for data processing, basically focusing on moorings and CTD profiles, and brings it in the required Imos format ready to be ingested. And part of this pipeline includes a NetCDF checker, the US IOS version, to ensure that data adheres to climate forecast conventions. I help to manage the vocabularies at the AODN. The AODN is an important partner in developing research or data vocabularies and Research Vocabularies Australia, which is in collaboration with the ARDC, Australian Research Data Commons. And Imos both submits and reuses content from the NERC, National Environmental Research Council Vocabulary Server, which is operated by the British Oceanographic Data Centre. Also, as that forms a basis of a lot of this information, is that late last year we submitted an application to become Core Trust Seal certified. As part of this process, the AODN was an active member of the ARDC Trusted Data Repositories Community of Practice. And together with other primarily domain data repositories, we worked on submissions for Core Trust Seal certification. For those that aren't familiar with Core Trust Seal, the submission requires addressing 16 requirements, which are intended to reflect the characteristics of trustworthy repositories. Just wanted to highlight in particular R11. So the repository has appropriate expertise to address technical data, and metadata quality ensures that sufficient information is available for end users to make quality related evaluations. So as part of this submission process, they are looking for information on your position on data quality and work that you're doing to enhance what your organisation does around this space. So the process of doing this submission was really valuable in sort of bringing together all that information that we have. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Natalia. And I'm wondering, you had mentioned that you have the reports from the ocean data that circumnavigate Australia. And I'm wondering with those reports, if you're disseminating data or links to data along with them, and what other information might be associated with them in terms of how they're disseminated.
Yeah, definitely in the reports, definitely. I've been working a lot with the Southern Ocean Time Series sub-facility recently, and they definitely provide links to where to find the data on both our data storage and do sort of point people towards the AUDN portal. And there's always this, we're trying to ensure that people can discover both the data and the information that they need with the data quality information, the reports and the QC manuals that we've got available. So we are trying to ensure that all are discoverable alongside each other. So.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. And is there another question for Natalia?
Yes, Bob, I've put one in the chat. I'm just wondering, like, that IOS site is just so fantastic. I've actually put links in the chat and links to like the Imos page and to the home page where the guidelines and templates are listed.
Thank you, Leslie.
No problem, Natalia. I'm just wondering out loud whether anyone knows of an equivalent site, say in, you know, seismology, climate data, environment data. Like we're here doing things on best practice, and so it'd be nice to know if we could gather equivalent web pages or protocols and procedures to what has been set up by the oceans people. So if we could put it in the notes or the chat, probably in the notes because it'll be persistent. That it's just asking out loud. And deadly silence follows.
I was going to say that's a really valid point. I'm not familiar with, I mean, I'm very, very ocean focused, but and also, like I said, I'm not really a data quality, I'm not a data scientist, but I'm not familiar with, I don't believe I've heard of any other similar, but yeah, like I said, I'm very, very ocean focused, so perhaps not.
Well, I can assure you there certainly isn't one in geochemistry. In fact, we don't even have agreement as to how a geochemical data set should be published, let alone its quality.
Yeah, we have a lot of challenges in front of us. We probably have time for another quick question, if anyone has one. I thought I saw another one in the chat, but I guess you answered that already, Leslie.
Actually, because I couldn't see the chat while I was speaking, but someone asked, is there a standard format for the individual ocean best practices documents? That I'm not familiar with. So our science officer is the liaison with the facilities and brings the documentation in. So I'm just in control of the submissions to OBP. I know that they do have a look at what I submit, more so from the metadata perspective. They do sort of jump into the documents sometimes, but I'm not sure if there's and I mean, it's quite difficult with the array of information that are presented in those reports. They can be quite different, whether you could get a standardized format, but they are definitely, I know just ones I was recently working on, they do ensure that those documents are reviewed internally before submitting or before finalising the product and submitting or providing them for us for submission to OBP and doing our own Imos workflow. So there is a degree of review and things like that. But I'm not sure, sorry.
And there's also another question from Chung Lin Chi. where he's asking, are they sharing certain common data formats?
As I sort of said, I'm not a data scientist, I'm the metadata person, but there is definitely, because all our data is funded by Imos, it's all, and with the data management facility, we do have control over that. So we definitely do ensure that for the different data streams, there is commonality and standards there. So, and we work with the different facilities for that ingestion process. So definitely for Imos, for funded data.
Yes, there are lots of parts to these systems.
Yeah, so I might the different facilities that I'd sort of touched on collecting data, they're all IMOS funded. So the requirement is that the data comes to the data management facility and is made available. So there's controls over there, and we work for the different facilities. So
yeah, this is Chong. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm personally very impressed by this so many facility. Okay, even some facility I never seen before. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're one facility for the whole of Australia, so it's, you know, we're
great.
Yeah. So I suppose it's easy.
I personally
we don't have the problems of Europe and things. So yeah.
All right, I really like that, but cartoon. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much again, Natalia. That was great. Our next,
no worries.
Our next speaker is Rama, and he's going to be talking about the interdisciplinary perspectives on data set quality and summarizing the perspectives that came out of SciDataCon. Please go ahead, Rama.
Yeah, I had already shared it before, and I'm having trouble finding it now.
Yeah.
That is strange.
Wow.
Well, let me just go to share all windows, show all windows.
Sometimes if you get out of the full screen view, you can.
Yeah. Well, let me just do this. There it is. Okay, let's go to full view, slideshow. Okay. Able to see it now?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, great. I need to go back here. All right. So we had a SciDataCon meeting. It was a virtual meeting in fall 2021. And several of us put in a session proposal and got approved. And our main purpose was to get broaden our perspectives, because we have been working on earth science information mostly, and we wanted to extend it to other areas, or not extend it to other areas, but be aware of what's going on in other areas. That was the main purpose of this session. So, so this virtual meeting happened October 18th through 28th, and here is a link to the session description. And so essentially, state of documenting and reporting data and information quality for supporting open science was the title. And several of us who are in the information quality cluster were organizers. And we had approximately 40 people attend who were international and multidisciplinary in nature. And so the session notes and presentation slides themselves are available at this Google Drive. And the main takeaway from this was, in multiple disciplinary areas, there is progress being made. And this was one of the first times when we all got together to talk about and exchange information about it. So we had 6 presentations, and the following slides provide some examples of key takeaways from these presentations. And the full presentation slides you can always look at. So because of the just 5 minutes here, I'm just summarizing them very, very quickly. So Peng is going to be talking a little more about the dataset quality So I don't need to belabor the point. Dataset quality is more than data quality, and improved sharing of dataset quality information takes a whole village. And Yashing spoke about the NASA's Earth Science Data System working groups. One of the working groups there is the Data Quality Working Group, which was active between 2014 and 2018. And in that working group, we analyzed, I think we had 16 use cases that we analyzed, arrived at over 90 recommendations, looking at how things were going on at the in the EOS DIS project and the DAX, and published 5 documents suggesting giving guidance on standards use and helping users access these kinds of recommendations. We had 90 recommendations and we prioritized them and published them in 5 documents. So that was the NASA Data Quality Working Group. And Peng Yue and Boishan Guan from OGC. They're both from Wuhan University, but they are talking about an activity in the Open Geospatial Consortium, or OGC, machine learning and artificial intelligence. So the issue there was availability of training data that was consistent. It was coming from multiple sources, and the challenges are there is lack of training data, or training from data from multiple organizations being inconsistent, difficulty in discovering and accessing and using. So the standard working group that's been approved by OGC is looking into this issue and looking at adding quality elements and as attributes and map quality and mapping the quality elements to ISO 19157. And Steve McEachern from social sciences area talked about, contrasted between official statistics and research data and things that are government driven or well-resourced, whereas the research data are not always quality controlled, under-resourced, and so on. So, and there are tools that facilitate automated quality assessment. So the national and international collections tend to be highly oriented toward data quality and tend to be more reliable. And so we had a gentleman from Africa, Peter Elias, who talked about citizen science, and that they engaged non-scientists in collecting data, and they have developed guidance documents to improve citizen science data quality. And the key takeaways from Mark Allen on astronomy. So he is from the Strasbourg Astronomical Data Center and is Core Trust Seal certified. Their expertise is built on 50 years of content quality and service quality. And the standards, the community defined and supported virtually observatory standards make the astronomy data fair. And the key point that he was emphasizing was that the responsibility for standards by a community for the community has many benefits. So this is a very brief summary of what happened in the meeting. And that's the last slide.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Rama. And in the interest of time, let's hold our questions until the end of Peng's talk as well, because it's very much related. Please go ahead, Peng.
Everybody, can you hear me all right?
Yes, and I see your slides, Peng.
Okay, so I'll continue with the exploration, the interdisciplinary perspective on data quality, and a very, very high level summary from the RDA Atkins plenary. By the way, my name is Peng, and I'm from the University of Alabama in Huntsville, one of the IQC co-chairs. So RDA plenary was held in November 3rd to 11th. It's also a virtual meeting. And we have proposed and host a bird feeder session on November 3rd, representing and communicating data quality information. And the organizers are representing ISIP IQC and Australia New Zealand Data Quality Interest Group, Barcelona Supercomputer Evaluation Quality Control Team, as well as Open Geospatial Consortium Data Quality Domain Interest Group. And we had over 110 registry showed their interest by adding the session to their agenda. We had about 47 attendees actively participate in the session. Again, they all are international and multidisciplinary. For the site, we have over 753 views. And the main purpose was to broaden the discipline base and the dataset quality information guidelines we have developed primarily by domain expert from earth science. And we have in the document, we have captured a lot of best practices and in documenting and capturing data quality. And we are interested in seeing how other disciplines doing what the challenges they're facing. And the byproduct is to gauge RDA community interests in terms whether want to have a RDA working group. Part of the reason we are going this path is we are provided in feedback to say what we have developed might be of interest to wider community. And we have 6 invited presentation. Somehow on my screen is kind of covered. Hopefully it won't be the situation for you guys. And that 6 presentation covers genomic data, astronomy data, also presentations on social science, including Bob gave one on earth science, as well as the geospatial and environmental use case development. And the key takeaway is that the best practices and the data types in various data disciplines might be quite different. However, the challenge we're all facing are very similar, and we do need to capture data quality information, but it's not that easy, and they are various different activities, effort are undertaking. So I have the session notes linked to the presentations on the slide that's linked in the Google Doc. And all the presentations can be downloaded from the session webpage along with the recordings. And I invite you to take a look at those excellent presentations. I think that's the, we had active participation and we had many excellent feedback. And one of the sampling I put it here is what brought you to the bird feeder session. And we have people from various different disciplines. And one is from atomic and molecular data, and another is from spatial sciences. And also one deals with the ecological data and the different communities. They say they have their own practices. However, they are always also interested in how other domains do and how they can utilize the best practices from other domains, take back to their own discipline. So there's a strong interest in sharing, and the session provide a good venture for that. And there are also quite good community interest in moving forward. We have started the planning for initiating RDA working group for fair dataset working FAIR Dataset Quality Information Guidelines. However, right now is on hold pending the organization commitment. Usually working group effort is about 12 to 18 months and requires the output. And there's a lot of undertaking. It would be nice to have organization support. We still need a EU co-chair, and definitely interested in any recommendations. I think that's what I have on this particular one. Bob, do you want me to stop here for question?
Yeah, this is a good place. If anyone has any questions for either Peng or Rama, this might be a good time to answer them or to ask them, sorry. One question that came to my mind, and I hadn't thought about this so much before, but I'm wondering about the commonalities between these two sessions. That is, some of the things that we saw from both communities that might give us insight on the enhancement of the data quality guidelines.
That's a great question. Yes, I think it will be good to go back to see that and integrate it into our best practices. Rama, would you like to chime in?
Commonality between the sessions, as well as even the different presentations within the sessions. There are some commonalities of goals, but the approaches being taken are somewhat different in different places. So, and bringing the community together, especially with the RDA, BFF, and the ongoing, I think there will be a session proposal being submitted to the SciDataCon 2022, as well as to the next RDA plenary to continue this kind of a international information exchange.
Yeah, so Rob Casey has a question about clarification between the data quality and the data set quality. So the data set quality include data quality, metadata quality, and workflow, et cetera, et cetera. So it's more than just the data quality itself.
Yeah, in the IQC 4 dimensions that we talked about, it covers both science quality and product quality. When you talk about data set quality, yeah.
And I also see Leslie's hand up. She might have a comment or question.
Yeah, I've got more a comment just so the group that's here understands how this worked, because yeah, this is about data set quality and how you communicate. That the data set I've just published does have some elements of quality in it. We haven't yet got to global standardization of exactly what quality means for each community. I can see that coming down the step. That's why I feel the site, that brilliant site that Natalia showed us, I mean, there isn't community agreement, but at least say I go out and buy a ocean sensing instrument, I can trawl through that and see how other people have handled metadata and data quality, even if there isn't a standard. I'd also like to point out that Ming, Fang and I from ARDC at a visit to ESIP saw what this ESIP cluster was doing and we're just blown away. And that's why we started an Australian one equivalent to this. But what has been published so far is very heavily biased by this group towards earth and environmental sciences. And so the reason we went to SciDataCon and to the research, the RDA plenary, was to actually say, my God, what's going on in astronomy? What's going on in social sciences? What's going on in astronomy? Because ultimately, like with the Sustainable Development Goals, we want to put data sets together. So if we can start to get a broader understanding of how everyone's defining quality, you can see how in a couple of years' time, this will be very valuable. But I'd just like to point out it started from this cluster in ESIP and now it's sort of gone around the world and is now merging out into other areas.
Yeah, we do have people from RDA participated, saying they would like to have the guidelines out as soon as possible.
And I'd like to express my appreciation to Leslie for helping out in all these things, in getting the speakers together in the SciDataCon, especially where I was trying to lead the session.
It just following on
Yes.
from what Peng said, certainly when I sort of suggested that we take this to RDA, the expression was, oh, thank goodness, finally someone's come along with something on quality. It's been missing for so long.
Yeah.
Yes, it's always a challenge.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Leslie. So I don't see any more questions. So Peng, do you want to go ahead and give your other presentation?
Yes,
On
sure.
the dataset quality guidelines?
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Okay, to set the stage for the breakout, and I'm going to give a very brief overview of international community guidelines for sharing dataset quality information. And the guidelines are developed by the International Fair Data Quality Information Community Guidelines Working Group. Everybody wants to know quality, whether you want to use the data or use a certain commercial product. However, it's always challenged to do so because there are so many different challenges. And one is, different quality means different things to different people. And another thing is that the knowledge required for curating the quality information needs to come from different places. So we have the working group, about 20 global domain experts from science, from data management and the technology to come together. And they are also from different sectors, government, academic, and the private sectors, and trying to develop the guidelines to make it easier for repositories or for data managers when they need to curate and share the quality information. So the 22 working group members are listed here, and they are expert in with expert knowledge on the whole life cycle of data sets. And I do have a slides here. I have given a number of the presentations in the past mentioned what the data set consists of. As Leslie has alluded to, and I mentioned earlier, data set consists of data set quality consists of data quality, metadata quality, and the workflow, and it's pretty much everything you do associated with creating, managing that data set. And we come together with the common interest in sharing quality information and bring our own best practices and along with challenges from our own domain. So it's sort of like a community of practice. The initial discussion was occurred in September 2019, and we had a pre-ESIP workshop in summer 2020, and brought the international expert, discuss the challenges and solutions, as well as the needs for consistently curating the dataset quality information. And since September 2020, the working group has been established. We have been developing the guidelines and put out the first draft as a white paper for community review in last April. And we have received excellent feedback and the suggestions and the comments, and we have gone through them and implemented most within the scope of our guideline document. And the baseline it in October 20 last year. And currently we're in the guideline document maintenance and update stage. At the same time, as we have mentioned in the discussion, that we would like to expand the disciplinary coverage of the guidelines and integrate the best practices from our discipline and broaden the application of the guidelines. So we have gone through, we have organized a number of the meetings, as Rama has talked about it for SciDataCon, and I have mentioned the RDA 18 plenary and this session for ESIP winter meeting. And secondly, we're doing the preparing publications for the describing the process of the guideline development, and which has submitted, and we're waiting for review and to hopefully we'll get a constructive review comments. And another aspect we are working towards is develop the data set quality use cases and also guideline implementation use cases. So I will provide outline of the guidelines. We have 5 guidelines. The first one is about describing dataset to ensure that dataset is findable and accessible. The guideline 2 is about utilizing a structured quality assessment model, could be one dimension, could be multi-dimension, to ensure the assessment model is findable and accessible. And the guideline 3 is to capture the assessment method result in data set level metadata to ensure the quality information is findable, interoperable, and reusable to machine end users. And Guideline 4 is doing the same to for the human end users. Then Guideline 5 is about reporting dataset quality information to ensure that information is online, is findable, and readily reusable. And the details of those guidelines are captured in the documentation, the guideline document, and that's linked below my presentation title. And for this particular session, we're going to go through the guidelines 3 and 4 in more details. And that, I think, where the Bob is coming to provide more details for those particular 2 guidelines.
Yes, thank you very much. That was great, Peng. And yeah, everybody is enjoying that timeline too. And it's evolving over time as well. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. We'll see how that works. Can you see that?
Yeah, we see it.
Oh, great. So you can hear me too. I was starting to wonder. Oh, I lost it. There it goes. Okay. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay, so
Bob.
Yes,
just
Leslie.
Before you start, could I just I've just put it in the chat. That's where that best practice site that Natalia just took us through, the iOS site. So yes, if you actually dig around that site, now maybe they're not community agreed, but what you can get are examples of some of these quality documents that Peng talked about, and then you can cross-reference to the homepage of the data set that you published it.
Oh, wow.
So I was just sort of making that cross-reference to people as to why we asked Natalia to come and present in this session.
Yes, that would be excellent. So I'm going to give you a deep dive into elements 3 and 4 of the guidelines, and this way we can discuss them in more detail. So, this thing's in my way. Looking at guideline 3, it's to capture the quality attributes, dimensions, assessments, and results in a data set level metadata record using a consistent framework schema. And so that would include things like semantically and structurally consistent consistency, and ideally that should be compliant with community, national, and international metadata standards. And then we also want to include a description of the quality attributes and their dimensions and aspects as they've been assessed. And so look at a description of the assessment method and assessment model structure and the version, if applicable, as well as the access date. And then we want to include a description of the assessment results, of course, and that should as well include versioning and the history of the assessments. So one example for that is the DSMM one-stop ISO quality metadata implementation from Peng 2019. And then the AtmoDat maturity indicator, Heidebrecht et al. 2020, and automated metadata and data quality extraction and geodashboard concept from Wagner et al. 2021. So would this be a good example of the examples that you mentioned, Leslie? Would they be good for guideline 3, you think, or perhaps guideline 4?
Well, I hope they are, because that's what we put in the paper. We went through them carefully to make sure that they were representative, just so people could get an idea. Again, I come back to the argument that this is about data set quality, not data quality. There's a subtle difference, but
surely,
yeah, it's about how do we describe the quality of the data sets that we're dealing with.
Yeah, so there were some notes from guideline 3 for adopting or adapting existing quality metadata frameworks. And also, if that's not possible, a new quality metadata framework or schema could be developed. And then also including a consistent metadata tag when developing a quality assessment metadata schema. And another example is also from Peng et al. 2019. That's using the metadata maturity stewardship metadata tag to denote stewardship maturity assessment. And then if we look at element 4, guideline 4, it's to describe comprehensively the assessment method, the workflow, and results in at least a human readable quality report. And so ideally this report would be following a template which has been published so that people are aware of that published template, and it meets the conditions of that or of the earlier guidelines, and then that is published with an explicit open license, of course, and a history of the report, and then that it's linked to the data set level metadata record as well, using the report persistent identifier. And here we have the DSMM one-stop as an example again, and also sea level ice from Lemieux et al. 2017, and then the quality maturity matrix from that was used at DKRZ from Hock et al. 2020. So that's my a quick deep dive into these guidelines. Oh, I think I have some instructions for moving forward as well. Sorry about that. Let's try that one. Yeah. Um, can you still see my screen? Whoops.
No, we don't.
You don't see my screen. Oh, gee. Yeah, that's what happens. Okay, well, what we're going to do is to break out into two groups. One group will stay here, and the other group will go into another room. And one breakout is going to look at Guideline 3, and the other breakout group is going to look at Guideline 4. And then the facilitators for each of these will help lead the discussions where we want to consider how a guideline could be used, and that way we can identify enhancements needed to use the guideline. So we plan to discuss the guideline, and in that regard, we hope to identify issues or concerns with either the language of the guideline or aspects that are not entirely clear or confusing, interpreted. And we want to also, if we can identify any information that we think is needed that is fundamental to the guideline, we certainly want to bring that out as well. And also any information that could improve understanding of the guidelines or even additional examples. So what we want to do is to share our comments and any questions even and ideas within the notes document under the two sections. It's nearer the bottom, the section for Guideline 3 and then the section for Guideline 4. And that way we can begin to capture that information. And also we'll then also identify a volunteer who will report on the group's discussion when we reconvene. So I think we probably have less than 20 minutes at this point for our breakouts. So they'll be quick. And then we'll return to the main room where we can have a representative from each group describe the group's findings, discuss similarities amongst these groups, and then identify takeaways from the session. In terms of facilitating this move to another room, Peng, which guideline was it that you wanted to discuss in the main room?
Whichever you would like to, and Yashin will do one room. I think you and David will be in another room.
Okay, will you want to do a Guideline 3 then in this room?
Sure, that will be fine.
Oh, great. And so then David, Rama, and I will move along with anyone else to the other room where we can discuss Guideline 4. Dan or Allison, is there a way for us to identify which room we want to move to, or?
Yeah, I can chime in here. I've got guidelines discussion element 4 created as a breakout room, and everyone who wants to self-select will just click on that when the breakout room option pops up. And if you want to stay in the main room, then you just stay here.
Oh, fantastic. Simple enough. Well, thank you very much, Allison.
Bob, I was going to suggest if we could maybe have a countdown timer where we can auto switch from that breakout room 4 back to the main room, just so it's automatic.
Okay.
That's possible.
Allison, is it possible to set that up for, it looks like we would have to do it in about 15 minutes, I think.
Yep. I've got it set for 15 minutes, and it will give everyone a 2-minute warning, and I can also broadcast a message to everyone too.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Allison. This is really helpful.
Yeah, happy to. I'll get the room opened up then.
Okay, I see it. I'm going to switch over now.
we can also stay in this room, right?
Yeah, and we'll
Okay.
be talking about the guideline 3 in this room.
Great.
Just want to give us some time for people to choose to join the other room.
Yes, if you just to clarify, if you want to discuss Guideline 4, if you click breakout rooms in kind of the bottom right middle of your Zoom screen, you should be able to select and join that Guideline 4. And if you want to discuss Guideline 3, you just stick in this room.
Okay.
A clarification that might help some of those who are less familiar with this. How do these guidelines compare to the ISO 19157 or whatever the proper number is, data quality standard?
They are different perspectives. So the ISO 19157 talk about the measure and capture the result. And the way we go about it, the ISO 19157 is one of the standards you can use to capture it. But the guideline is to provide a guidance on how you want to capture and what you should capture in order to be human readable, machine readable, and interoperable. So guideline 3 will be focused on the machine end users, and that's where the interoperability comes about. I don't believe 19157 mentioned anything about interoperability. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I just sort of add that Ivana Ivanova of Curtin University, and she's not on this call because it's like 4 a.m. for her. She is the lead of the ISO, or has connections to the ISO 19157 and also to the OGC data quality work. So that work is going on in parallel and connected to this. So we're fully aware of 19157 and we're definitely not duplicating that. And in fact, if you want to also get into it deeper, Ivana is calling for use cases that can go into these OGC ISO standards as well. So we've kind of got that broader connection. And as Peng said, what we're trying to do is make the quality information that goes with the data sets findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Ming, do you want to add to it?
Yes, I just want to point out that Ivana is going to give an update on the data quality work, data quality standard ISO 19157 in our next Australia data quality interest group. It's 12 p.m. in Australia time. It might be 4 or 5 p.m. your US time. If anyone interested to hear the update, you are welcome to join our session.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. If you know the information, maybe put in the chat so people can register. So Ivana, we are also collaborating with her in the aspect of OGC, data quality domain working group, developing use cases. So I'm putting up the guidelines 3 here. I know it's very short, and to give you a more time to go over it. And as I want to look at this, as Bob has mentioned, we would like to we would like to look at it, see the completeness, what is missing. And the addition is what are the additional details we need to capture to enable interdisciplinary use. Okay, I'm going to go back to the guidelines. Yashin, I will not be able to see chat if you can pay attention to chat.
I will.
Okay, thank you. So there's two, as I mentioned, there's two guidelines is talking about how to capture. And when they capture, whether it's in, let's say, metadata, which is more machine and users, or in a human readable report. And we want to emphasize that to capture the quality attributes or aspect or dimension. So attributes, quality attributes could be, for example, completeness or timeliness, and the aspect that it kind of related to Rama has mentioned throughout the dataset lifecycle could be science quality, the product quality, storeship quality, or service quality, and the dimension. And there's many different definition for quality dimensions depending on the different perspective. And one popularly used for data quality dimension that includes completeness and accuracy and the timeliness and and other number quality attributes. So it doesn't really matter which attributes or dimension or aspect you want to assess, and the idea here is to capture them so people know what you want to assess, and assess method, what method you used, whether you're using a QC QA framework or you're using maturity, let's say storeship maturity model, or fairness indicator. You want to capture that as well, and the results, and what are your results. If you have the indicator, you level 3 or whatsoever, you can capture them. You could potentially use the ISO 19157 to do so, but it's not. We're not saying what you should use. And here we emphasize the 3.1. We want it to be semantically and structurally consistent, and that helps with the interoperability. And it also helps to compare cross, so you can actually compare apple to apple. The 3.2 is talking about the description, and 3.2 to 4 is talking about the description of the attributes, method, and the results. And the 3.5 dealing with the version history, and that's sort of simple way of capture the province of the assessment. So I am going to.
Peng, we have a comment in the session notes under completeness.
Okay.
Someone suggested we should also specify algorithms or mathematical approaches where applicable. In some cases, both. That's for 3.4.
That's interesting. So the algorithm, the let's say the assessment method, that's assessment. So the assessment including the attributes, method, and result. Would that also including the algorithm?
So
more specifically, the method should be descriptive, even down to, because many times these assessments are done algorithmically, not just subjectively, and so it may require the precision of describing a mathematical approach, possibly coupled with an algorithmic approach to arriving at a particular result.
Right, I agree with you. I'm just trying to think whether the assessment method would include that, or we need to be more specific about what approach used.
And when you refer to approach, is this a sampling method?
Sampling method depends on what you are, depends on what you do. Let's say if you're doing QA/QC or validation, sampling method will be part of that assessment approach, right?
Mm-hmm. So for in one instance, you could do like a bulk assessment of the quality of a data set, maybe a workflow, by saying that we use a Monte Carlo method of selecting a particular set of parameters to do a sample data acquisition, right, and then assess the result, that kind of thing. And,
right.
You know, because some assessments, they always use exactly the same parameters every time, and of course, then you don't get good averaging. Yeah.
So idea here is to provide the description that people can know what you do. The idea is to have that reproducibility. If you have the comprehensive description, whether you use bulk or you, some people, like when they do accuracy, right, they use a global, they do globally, but when you go to locally, and you may get a different result. So here we're not really suggesting, any particular method you should use, but we just say that you should capture that information so other people understand what you did, and if they need to. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because either they want to understand the assessment that was made, or they want to know whether they can trust the veracity of the assessment that was made.
Exactly, and also they may want to reproduce it, right?
True.
Yeah.
So I have a question about the examples that are provided. Like, I haven't had a chance to look into those. Like what Rob just provided, like, an example of what you might write, like that would be helpful here, like showing both what it looks like to be semantically and structurally consistent, but then also here's what people include. This is what a good description looks like.
Yeah,
that would be really helpful. Is that what those are?
That's great. So that's where you find in the guideline document. We don't have time to go over, but it does have, for that particular example, the model is structured, and when they capture in the metadata, they actually use a structured way, and it has its own schema. So continue. I will try to find that part at this the guideline document. Let me see. Maybe I can come out. Do you see in the Google Doc that link to the guideline document?
Yes, I'm in that document now.
Okay, cool. So in the, I want to stop sharing so I can. So you guys continue with other questions, and I will find that area, show you.
Thank you.
So I see we have another suggestion in the what's missing perspective. This is for guidelines 3.2, possibly also indicate the grading system or rubric used to indicate the level or score of quality. Whoever provided that suggestion, do you mind speak up and talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, we are going back now. Okay, Madison, I don't have time to find it. If you get a chance, take a look at the document and let me know if you have any additional questions.
Okay, will do.
All right, thank you.
Time really flies.
Oh, we actually have another minute also, so we should have a time for another question.
Good. Peng, do you want to address that suggestion that I just mentioned?
Is it in the chat? Can you repeat? Because I was looking for.
It's in the Google Doc. It's in the Google Doc.
Yeah, for 3.2, basically, some quality assessments are really just kind of like a grade of color, or maybe how many stars, you know, something that's a scoring mechanism. So up front, before you even describe how you make an assessment, you say, we consider this level of this particular aspect to be what we consider excellent, you know, as far as like, you know, and other ones we'd consider to be poor or you know, moderate capability. So it seems like at some point up front, you want to say what you would be targeting even before you get into the techniques to reach that.
Yeah, it does. And that also gets to the point, you see the guidelines, we're now saying what is good, because what is good is relevant to the applications, and it's good for one application may not be necessarily good for another one. And by providing information, we'll let user decide. It's like let consumer decide what is good for them, what is acceptable quality for them, you know, whether it's data quality or software quality.
Yeah, I agree with that point too.
Great.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we get pulled back?
We got pulled back.
It's okay.
We've returned. So that was short, but I think even though it was very short, I suspect, well, at least for the group that was looking at Guideline 4, we were very productive. We had a very intense discussion, and it seemed to be very good. I did collect some notes, actually, just on my desktop. I can put them in the guideline, in the notes document, but it was easier for me just to work in a notepad, which is what I usually do. But I was wondering with the group that was looking at Guideline 4, whether they've had any progress? Or Guideline, sorry.
Yeah, Shane, do you want to give it a try?
Sure. I have tried to capture some key points. Let me bring them up, and Peng, please add if there's anything missing. So at the beginning of the breakout, we actually had some conversation to clarify the purpose of the guidelines for the DQI. Basically, the clarification is between what's the connection or relationship, or is there any overlap between the guidelines that we're working on and other standards or frameworks like ISO 19157. And Peng clarified that they have different perspectives. And the ISO 19157, for example, focuses more on the particular measurements, and the DQI guidelines focuses more on the what part, what to measure, and also how to convey the quality information to the users following the fair guidance. And we also had some conversation about the potential things that are missing that hopefully could be added into the guidelines, including, for example, 3.2, Rob Casey suggested that possibly we can add some ways to indicate the grading system or a rubric used to indicate the level or score of quality. I think we had some similar conversations previously at IQC about the desire of the community for a rubric to basically provide a much easier way to understand quality information for a data set. And then there was another suggestion or a question. Should we also specify algorithms and mathematical approaches where applicable? And there was some discussions regarding that. And Peng clarified that the guideline itself focuses more on the method that's used should be described and conveyed to the user, while not suggesting some specific methods to assess the quality of a dataset. I think that's pretty much the points I captured. Feel free to add.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good recap. We had a very good discussion, and we could continue, but we are run out of time. And I think this session is also run out of time, Bob.
Yes, I agree. We're out of time. I just wanted to say that we've put in a bunch of notes here, and we did come out with a few suggestions for additional details that will enable interdisciplinary use, such as implementation examples, and should we actually develop new implementations of dataset quality guidelines that could be used as an example, and then should we describe the workflow that was used to create the new implementations that could guide implementation? So yes, these are very good suggestions, and we would like to thank everybody for joining this session. We're going to have to, we'll have to find the takeaways within the notes here later. So please, everybody, feel free to add to the notes as we move forward, and we'll scour them for takeaways.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob, for organizing the session and hosting session. It's a great session.
And thank you everybody for speaking. Natalia, Peng, Yakxing, Rama, and everybody for your contributions. This is great.
And ISIP fellows are excellent in putting out the chat and the links, and they do so much better job than we do. I think Min and Lexley have their hands up.
Oh, please go ahead. I can't see the hands.
Okay, they're good.
Did they want to say something?
I think they're good.
Oh, okay. Well, again, thank you very much, everybody, for all of your contributions here. This is really great. And yes, and thank you to the excellent ISIP fellow, Dan. That was fantastic. May I presume that they're going to capture the chat notes too?
Yeah, at the end of the document, anyone that put information or link or ideas, I already have that copied in there.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Dan. This is, and Allison too, if you're still with us, we really appreciate all your help as well.
Well, thank you for a very interesting session. Very useful work.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Xiang, for your question. We'll put the definition of data set in the Google Doc.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob. That's great.
Thank you for the great presentation, everyone.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you for being part of it.